Prelims, we pound for pound. UFC thrills, stills nights get loud. Big EQP, that's how we get down.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the GRP. Back at it again after a pop-up podcast that had some technical difficulties, and I can already hear, I don't know, it might be me, or it might, I don't know if it's coming across the stream, but it sounds like the music's like somewhat doubled up. But you know what? We're gonna roll with it because I'm not about to fix it. I've had a rough day. Wasn't feeling great. I'm surprised I'm here right now. I had a horrible headache, took me down, had to go to sleep, but I'm here. I made it. I went home early from work. I slept for like 2 hours or more. That's not normal for me. I know that this has happened to me recently, like a few times, and I don't know what the deal is. Stupid. I inherited some bad headache issues with, I know both my parents have had issues with headaches. So I had it yesterday at the end of the day of work. It carried on through the night a little bit, but it kind of went away. And then last night after the podcast, I felt it a little bit. What's up, Infinity? Infinity's in the chat. Thanks for joining in, bro. But yeah, so I woke up this morning thinking, okay, you know, I wasn't even thinking about a headache. And about 10 minutes after I wake up, I just like feel it. It's just there. So it just continued. I took some leave right away when I woke up. I ate breakfast to make sure that, you know, I kind of got that going and I wasn't like hungry because that'll give me a headache sometimes. I did everything I could think of and I was just dying, man. So yeah, but I'm here. I made it. I got through it. I still feel like right on this side and right up here on my head is like sore, and it sucks. It sucks. I headaches are like my worst enemy, because when I get them, if I get a mild headache, I'm okay. It's irritating, it's aggravating. I get annoyed, but whatever, I can deal with it. But when I get those crazy like migraine type headaches, fuck, it kills me. And it's not good. I have to do something to get rid of it because I just feel like my brain's gonna explode. So hopefully that's not anything real serious. I even thought about not making a drink, but I had to because I'm feeling better. My head's just barely sore, like I said. So one and done for tonight, just to get me through the pod and get me relaxed like normal. And you know, I just had to work through it, man. It was tough. So if you're here, thank you for being here with me. Appreciate the support. Appreciate you guys tuning in. We're back at it with a regular episode of the GRP. Last night we had a pop-up podcast with Technically Unsound, minus Tommy, because that's why it was here on the GRP channel, because Tommy had prior engagements with work that kept him from being able to jump on the pod. So I jumped in, and man, the technical difficulties are never ending. If you listened last night, you heard what happened. I thought I turned off my laptop as I walked away from it after prepping for the podcast last night. And it turns out, sometimes you hit the power, to turn it off, shut it down. Didn't realize it said shut down with update and shut down. I guess it must have, unless it just did it on its own. I'm not sure, but my laptop never shut down. It actually did an entire update. So I came back to looking like my laptop was brand new. Like you have to do everything to start it up. This is not good. So I start everything up and everything seems fine. And I'm talking like this is half hour before we're going live last night. And luckily I got everything going, but it turns out for the first few minutes of the podcast, my audio was muted because I didn't check that. So hopefully right now, I see my meters going up in OBS. So, this is kind of some insight into what I'm talking about. If you look over here, right down here, you see a meter kind of jumping up and down. So that means that my audio is working for OBS, and that's how I'm streaming. So hopefully that means we're getting good audio. You could see the meter jumping on my Rodecaster too, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going out. So yeah, that's what you got to pay attention to. But when you're squirreling all over the place trying to make sure everything's good and panicking, because I just tend to panic because I'm just like, come on, man, I'm trying to go live here. I'm trying to do something. And, you know, I'm the only one that can work on it. So it is what it is. It happened. It's done. We got through it. We had some good banner. We had some good arguments. And and then we troubleshot Infinity stuff. So Infinity says it sounds good to him. So that's good. Hopefully he maybe figured out some stuff with his setup. If not, maybe this weekend we can kind of tackle that a little bit. But yeah, this weekend we have a UFC pay-per-view, the last UFC pay-per-view of the year. UFC 310 was supposed to be Bilal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov for the main event, and it was supposed to be a 2-title fight because Alexandre Pantoja, actually, I'm not sure if he was actually supposed to fight initially, because they brought in Kaya Sakura. Yeah, I guess they did that before Bilal dropped out. But they brought in Kaya Sakura from Ryzen, and they're fighting for the flyweight championship because Pantoja's basically beaten everybody that matters right now. So yeah, they had to bring in some new blood, and this guy's making his debut with a title shot. First fight in the UFC, fighting for a title. Craziness. That's got to be a lot of pressure, but he's a badass. So we'll get into that here in just a few minutes, because that's really what we're revolving this entire show around today is UFC 310. Not much else going on. Not a whole lot of news or anything like that. You know, the Conor McGregor stuff has fizzled a little bit. You know, Jake Paul fought already, and he's just on Twitter or X just talking shit like usual. He's actually trolling and making fun of himself, saying that he's going to fight like a 3 million year old dinosaur. So, which is pretty funny. I mean, at least he can make some jokes out of it, because he gets the fact that, you know, people are talking shit. So anyway, yeah, so there's not a whole lot of other news going on. We're, you know, wrapping up the year here. We're in December. If you're a Spotify user, that means you've seen all kinds of Spotify wrapped up or wrapped or whatever the fuck it's called. I always forget. Either way, hopefully in your podcast list, you had the Going Rounds podcast in there, because I am on Spotify. As you can see right down here, when it gets to it, Spotify will pop up and you'll see that I am on Spotify. So there it is, right on cue. So you can listen to the audio version only. I prefer you watch the video here just to get me my views on YouTube. I'd appreciate that. But for some reason, if you can't keep YouTube going, you can always watch the video on Spotify. But you can listen to the audio only version. It's either or both if you want, on Spotify. But you can also find me anywhere else you get your podcasts. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll get it on that platform. Easy enough. But yeah, that's it. Don't forget to follow all my social media going on right down there. What am I talking about? The rest of my social media: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Don't be like Josh getting hacked. That sucks, bro. You know, a lot of us keep a lot of memories and stuff on our Facebook, especially, but on Instagram and stuff too. And when you get hacked, it's not good. It's not fun. And somebody really got a hold of his shit, so that sucks. But other than that, don't forget to like and subscribe. Appreciate you for being here again, like I said. And let's not forget our sponsor for the podcast. We got, I always hold it on the wrong side. Noctane smelling salts. Got a new bottle. It's nice and strong. I'm not sure that I should hit this really hard right now, because I don't want, well, you know, I don't think it's going to make my head hurt, but that's a lot of pressure. Maybe we'll play it safe. Because of my headache issues, maybe I won't hit the hard-hitting smelling salts. Wait a minute. This is not my new bottle. I forgot to bring my new bottle in here. That's okay. So then I can hit it, because it's not going to be too harsh. Listen, this is the most potent one. Okay, so you get a reaction because it is the most potent, the red cap, but they have a black cap that's less potent and a white cap that's like, barely there. So, but it still works well. And if you want to try them out, the white cap is the way to go. If you're a little more brave, get the black. Work your way up to the red, though. Don't get the red right off the bat. So I will take a small hit here because I would like to be a little more alert. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. That's good. That's good. Just enough, but it really does wake you up. And it gives you that nice little adrenaline rush. So go check out their website, hit that QR code, go buy a bottle. They're not that expensive and they last a while if you take care of them, and they're fun and they're good to use, especially when you need a little pick me up, a little adrenaline rush, a little stay awakeness. I don't know how else to say that, but that's my sponsor for the podcast. Appreciate the sponsorship, Noctane. Infinity knows what I'm talking about because he has a bottle too, and you should go get yourself one as well. So that's it for that. And I mean, I know I say it a lot, but this might be a shorter show because I really only have UFC 310 to go over besides the PFL real quick. And with my headache and my stomach, my stomach was killing me earlier too. So I had a lot of stuff going on. I was nauseous as hell. I thought I was going to puke. All kinds of stuff was happening. So with all that, let's just get through this. Let's talk about the fights. And I just remembered that I forgot to add something. So I'm going to do that real fast before we get into things, because I would like to make sure that I have this in here. But like I was saying, the technical difficulties are stuff that really get to me and I hate it, but sometimes you can't avoid it. Like, that's technology basically. There's not much you can do about it. Sometimes things just happen, and I mean, it sucks. It's unpredictable as hell, and you just never know when it's gonna hit. And like, even wow, cool. I did that wrong, but that's okay. Even when you think you have everything set up and ready, you find out that you don't, and then you panic if you're like me. And it's weird because I don't panic in all situations. That I just panic when it's like this stuff, because I just want it to go well, and unfortunately it doesn't always go well. But we get through it and we keep it going, and we're here and we're still doing it. So that's some of the stuff that you have to deal with when you're doing podcasting, especially when you go live. The biggest thing is going live is the hardest part, really, I think, because you just never know what's going to happen. And if you have to take care of everything, that's the hard part, because then you have to figure out what's going on while also making sure that, the podcast is actually happening like it should be. So let me just get these things put in here real quick, so that I can make sure that when I get to them, you can see them. And this is what I'm talking about. I was so worried about doing these couple of other things that I forgot to add these things in. No big deal. I got it done. And I will get to the show here in just a second. Man, this is tough, because I'm sitting here like, I shouldn't be messing around right now, but I kind of have to, because I forgot to put these couple things in. And it's actually not that hard to do this, but when you're not fully attentive to it, you could mess up, and then you find out the hard way that you didn't do it right. So luckily it's only a couple things, and I already had part of it set up, so that's good. That's good. Cool. There we go. Now we can get to the topics at hand, and that is combat sports news and the PFL. Here we go. All right, so last Friday, there was not much going on in the world of combat sports because it was Thanksgiving weekend. Infinity, if you're still here, let me know if that music's loud, because it sounds louder in my ears, but I think I know why. So hopefully it's not that loud. And tell me if it sounds doubled up too, because it sounds doubled up to me, and I don't know if that's locally here for me or if that's coming through to you too. But yeah, so the PFL was the only event going on. It's their championship series for 2024. All the winners got $1 million purse, so that's what they won. Sounds fine on this end. Okay, good. So it might just be me, and I'll figure that out later. I'm okay with the double sound as long as it's not going through. But yeah, so I mean, they had like 16 fights on this card. It's insane. And a lot of these guys and girls, no one really knows. I don't know. I mean, unless you're like a crazy diehard, you might know. But it looks like they didn't have a ton of decisions. It was a good mix of everything. So that's good, considering there's that many fights. It kept people involved, and it kept the flow of the fights going, which is good. So I mean, starting at the bottom, we started with the KO head kick. Then it's a guillotine choke for submission. So that was, the head kick was Costello von Steenis versus João Vitor Dantas in the 185 division. That was a KO head kick. Steenis wins. Asael, I can't even say these names. That was a guillotine submission. Unanimous decision for Gabriel Braga over Jeremy Kennedy. Those names are familiar. So split decision for the next fight. Submission for Barnau versus Elfie Davis. Another decision. I can't say those names. KO TKO right hook for Ali Taleb versus Rashid Haas. Taleb with that KO there. Another KO, knees to the body. Hatan Al Saif versus Lilia Asmani. That's the women's atomweight division. So the women's fight ended with a KO too. That's good. Another KO. So 3 KOs in a row here. Omar Al Dafari versus Mohammed Al Quara. I think KO TKO left hook and hammer fist in that one. Man, so many tough names. 4 KOs in a row. A lot of performance bonuses. Oh no, it's just tournament winner. That's what that is. Okay, good. So these all these tournament winners got big purses, and that's good as far as, you know, for fighter pay. But I don't know, PFL still is not really 100% at what, you know, appealing to the masses, I guess. They're not like the UFC. Even though the UFC may not pay as much to as many fighters, they still have a better promotion overall, especially when it comes to promoting. So yeah, we had a couple of submissions, more KO TKOs. I mean, look, there's a lot of this might have been worth watching, because there was a lot of KOs and TKOs. There's a few submissions and a few decisions. So it seems like a pretty exciting night. I didn't watch it because it's just one of those it's a weird time to have fights on, you know. People are wrapped up with family and doing other things. So I just didn't watch it. It just didn't happen. It wasn't something that I watched maybe highlights of the last few fights. So, and here's some of the winners right here. Some of the bigger winners. And that is Timur Kizriev. That was the main event versus Brendan Loughnane, and Tazirov gets a unanimous decision win. Loughnane had been winning the tournament before and was doing really well, but he gets upset by Timur. Dakota I can't say her name right now. Decheva is she's a star in the making, because this girl comes out, beats the shit out of everybody. She finished Tyla Santos in the second round by KO TKO by body shots. I mean, those body shots were fucking killer too. So, and Tyler Santos was kind of trolling Dakota with because I guess Dakota did some like modeling or something, but she was trolling her, telling her, you know, stuff like, you know, go put on your lipstick and all this other shit. And Dakota came out and just whooped her ass, which is pretty funny. And now everyone's talking about when she's going to make it to the UFC, because Tyler Santos fought a bunch of the big names in the UFC and they weren't able to finish her like Dakota did. So that's big news there, and that's big ups for Dakota Dacheva, because she, you know, she made a statement and she won that tournament again, and she's just a badass. So then we had this name that has more letters in the alphabet, I swear to God, Dovlet Yagshimuradov. He fought Impa Kasangane, who's won the tournament before as well, former UFC fighter who had a viral KO that got KO'd, and it went viral, I should say, by Joaquin Buckley, but then comes back and winds up in the PFL and basically makes a name for himself there. So and he is the big favorite all the time, and he wound up getting KO'd in the first round, 58 seconds into the first round. So that did not go his way, but I'm sure he'll be back and ready to go again for the next round of tournaments, their next season. We had Shamil Musayev versus Magomed Umalatov. That was a KO, TKO, left hook and ground and pound for Musayev in the third round there for that win. And then we had Gadzi Rabadanov versus Brent Primus, who Brent Primus has been a big name in Bellator and had big fights with Michael Chandler in the past and stuff. So he looked to be the favorite in this one, but he wound up getting TKO'd as well in the third round. So that wraps it up. Those are your winners of the tournaments. That's the end of the season for PFL. We'll see what they have in store for us next year, what kind of mix-ups and changes they're gonna make regarding, you know, the acquisition of Bellator. You know, a lot of the Bellator fighters have been complaining about not getting fights. A lot of fighters have been complaining about not getting fights. They have so many fighters on that roster now, and they're not used to what was I gonna say? I totally forgot what I was saying. Oh no. They're not used to handling that many fighters and then having to juggle the kind of Bellator side of things, and they're just not seemingly doing well with that. So I'm hoping to see them fix it, make it better, and give us a lot to look forward to in this upcoming year, because there is really no good number 2 to the UFC right now. So I don't know how they could fix it, because the PFL was not doing the absolute best on their own, and then they acquire Bellator, and now, you know, they have that to deal with. But they do have the Saudis behind them with some stuff. You know, they still have Francis Ngannou, they have Jake Paul behind them, they have all these other things that they just haven't done anything with. They make all these big great announcements, but they never roll with it, they never put it in motion. So that's what we need to see, something big coming from them, so that we have other stuff to look forward to and another place for fighters to go to that's legitimate, because One Championship is also having their problems with people talking about their contracts, their pay, the treatment over there and everything else. So with all that happening, it's probably best it's probably best for PFL to get their shit together and really make a run for it and do better. So I hope to see it, because I do like, you know, the UFC is the best and it's always going to be at the top until someone really knocks them off. But I'd like to see somebody at least be in a close second, so that we have all this extra stuff to pay attention to. The UFC puts out so much, it's hard to compete. But at least if there's somewhere for some of these other fighters to go when they need to go somewhere else, there needs to be that option. So for the fighter's sake, and for fighter pay, there needs to be competition. It's better. So hopefully they get it together and get something going this upcoming year. So that does it for PFL. And I almost forgot, and I didn't even talk about this, and it's gonna bug me because I did this in a preview mode and it's not really lined up, so I'm gonna fix it here. There we go. So I forgot to even mention it last night because we were doing so many different kind of things with everything, but I am doing a watch party this upcoming weekend with Mr. Golf and Glory, Clark. You may have seen him in some content that I made for TikTok, and if you haven't, go check out my TikTok. I try to, you know, be a little consistent there with some content and all that. But yeah, Golf and Glory joining in for the in studio watch party podcast for UFC 310, and I also have my buddy Josh, who I was talking about earlier. Unfortunately, can't even talk about his his social media because he's been hacked everywhere. Keep that shit away from me. But yeah, Josh will be in here. He's been on the podcast before. He'll be in here joining in as well, unless he flakes, so I hope not. But yeah, we're just doing in studio because I got two other people in here with me. I didn't even mention it to the guys because I completely forgot. It's been one of those weeks. This headache has been killing me and I forgot. But it is happening Saturday during the main card of UFC 310. So come back here. It'll be 8 p.m. Arizona time. Same channel. Come check it out. Watch us fuck around, do a lot of smelling salts, have some drinks, bullshit talk, and fight. Lots of fight talk because we're gonna be live reacting to all of the main card fights, and I feel like this is gonna be a great card. So speaking of being a great card, let's go ahead and ooh, I just remembered something that would have messed up if I didn't remember to change it, which is bam, done. Okay, so speaking of a great card, let's get into UFC 310. Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura, like I mentioned before, coming over from Ryzen, making his debut in the UFC and getting an automatic title shot right away because he is a badass in Ryzen. He's been a champ over there. He's made a name for himself. He is highly popular all around the world. His YouTube numbers are insane. He's got like so many more YouTube followers, views on all of his content, so much more than every guy in the UFC basically. So he's huge, and he's I think he's from Japan. So yeah, I mean, he's got just a huge following, so he definitely has promotional value, and he's just kind of a cool guy. Like, he's a chill dude. He sits back, he has some swag, he just hangs out. You know, the English is rough, but he still makes it out, and kind of does some talking, so it's good. Alexandre Pantoja is a badass. I mean, he's beaten pretty much everybody in the division that is ranked in the top 10, I think. And you know, he's the title holder right now. He's defended it, I think, once or twice. Let's see, I do want to double check that. Yeah, I think he's defended it twice against Urseg. Oh, he's shit 3 times maybe. Oh no, this will be the third. He won it against Brandon Moreno, he defended it against Brandon Royval, and then he defended it against Steve Urseg. So yeah, he's looking to go on a run of title defenses and you know, be one of those champs to be remembered. But that Brandon Royval fight was very close. The Steve Urseg fight was a little better for him, but still he gets beat up a lot. So this is gonna be tough because Asakura is definitely a striker. And then we got a couple other guys who are completely undefeated overall in their career and in the UFC, obviously. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Gary. So this was supposed to be Rakhmonov versus Bilal Muhammad for the title, and Bilal Muhammad has that, you know, bone infection in his toe, so that had to get, you know, nixed. And So they kept Shavkat on the card to fight Ian Gary, of all people, who is actually supposed to be on the very last card of the year next weekend versus Joaquin Buckley in a main event there for the fight night. But obviously you're going to take a fight against another undefeated fight. Well, shit, not a lot of people want to take a fight against another undefeated fighter, especially somebody as dangerous as Shavkat, who has 18 finishes. He's 18-0 with all finishes. It's crazy. A lot of submissions, but a lot of KO TKOs as well. So this is a dangerous fight for Ian Machado Gary, but he says he's up for it. And we've seen him do some big things in the past, but his recent fights haven't been all that exciting, and he hasn't been like finishing in crazy ways or anything like that, like Rachmanov. So we'll get into that a little more here after we cover some more of this card, because from the bottom to the top, there's some names on this card, and there's definitely some great fights happening on this card. And I'm actually pretty surprised at how low key it is, because it is the last pay-per-view of the year. Last year's pay-per-view was not great at the end of the year, if I'm remembering correctly. Can't fully remember who was on it, but I just remember it not being the best card ever. And this one has full potential to be one of the best cards of this year, especially with the amount of names. I'm talking early prelims. You're going to see in just a second the names that are on these early prelims. So if you want to bet, there's a lot of good underdog bets here. I will have my picks at the end of the preview, and I'll let you know my picks as we go as well. But I'll have a breakdown. I only break down and make picks for the main card, just to keep it simple. But I'll give you my insight as I see it for some of these other fights as we go through the preview of the early prelims and the prelims. I'm gonna just talk about it a little more than usual and break them down a little bit, but I have some overall visuals here just to show you what's going on with this fight card if you haven't paid attention. So let's get into that right now with the early prelims. I went ahead and made a graphic for this just to kind of put it all together. And I mean, we're talking from the bottom. Right away, you get a recognizable name with Kennedy Nzechukwu, who's had some impressive wins in his past few fights. He's coming off a win over Chris Barnett, needed a body and punches in round 1. He was on a 2-fight losing streak before that to Ovince St. Preux and Dustin Jacoby, but he's beaten Ian Cutelaba, Carl Roberson, Carlos Olberg, who is on a tear right now. So I mean, he's beaten some pretty decent names. He's had some great fights. He's definitely a big guy, and one of those guys that's ready to do some damage. He's fighting Lucas Brzeski, who's 9-5 overall and is 1-4 in the UFC. That's tough. His only win being over Velter Walker. His last fight was a loss. It was a loss to Mick Parkin. So hasn't fought the biggest names: Carl Williams, Waldo Cortez Acosta. But yeah, 1-4. That's not great. So this is looking good for Nzechukwu. But Brzeski always has that possible chance to sneak in a win here. With Nzechukwu also having some losing streaks mixed into his record there too. So then we have Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper, old school versus new school, kind of, because Chase Hooper looks like a 10-year-old, but Clay Guida, what's up, Cold Art Maker? Clay Guida with the old dog, just back in here, 40 plus years old. Let's see, what is he is 42 years old, 38-24. That's fucking insane. That's a lot of goddamn fights. 18-18 in UFC, so he has a 500 record, but Shavkat will beat that vegan boy Ian. Cold Art Maker with the hot takes always. I'm with you on that one. I'm pretty sure Shavkat can get that win, but I'll tell you why I think Ian has a chance when we get to that. But Clay Guida is on a 3-fight losing streak with losses to Joaquim Silva, Rafa Garcia, and he lost to Chase Hooper in grappling. So it's actually a 2-fight losing streak in the UFC. But he's grappled Chase Hooper before in Fury Pro Grappling, and he lost to Chase Hooper in that by submission calf slicer. So that's something to think about when you are looking at it. Of course, MMA is different. You got to worry about those strikes, as well as the ground game. But Chase Hooper's got a little bit of both. 4 wins by KO TKO and 7 wins by submission. Has not lost by submission ever. So he's 6-3 in the UFC and is coming off a win over Virtulev Borshev. His last loss being to Aljamain Sterling in a grappling event as well. So damn, Tapology gives you the grappling in the mix and it throws me off. But Chase Hooper's actually on a 1-2-3 fight win streak. Jordan Levitt and Nick Fiore were his other 2 wins. So that should be a good one there. I'm leaning more towards Chase Hooper, just age-wise. Maybe, he beat him in grappling already as well. So if he gets it to the ground, he'll have a good chance there. But Clay Guida's a dog, and he is the animal. So he does some crazy shit, and everything looks over exaggerated because of that crazy hair. And he'll get slapped the fuck up by his brother before he gets in the cage too. So he's gonna be alert and ready. If you've ever seen a walkout from Clay Guida, you know what I'm talking about. He's insane. But 42-year-old still doing the damn thing against Chase Hooper, who is 25. So that should be interesting. Then we got Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. 17-7 for Chiesa. Griffin 20-10. Both these guys vets now. Michael Chiesa won the Ultimate Fighter back in the day, and he's looking to make a statement here with a win over Max Griffin. 36 years old for Chiesa. 12-7 in the UFC, coming off a win to Tony Ferguson back in August of this year with that rear naked choke. Before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak with losses to Kevin Holland, Sean Brady, and Vicente Luque. 2 of those being by Darce choke. So he's susceptible to getting choked out with that Darce. So if Max Payne Griffin is looking to, find a weakness on Chiesa, but Chiesa is also good on the ground as well, so maybe that's why he gets stuck in those. I mean, Griffin only has 2 wins by submission, 9 wins by KO TKO. He's 8-8 in the UFC, another 500 record there. He's coming off a win over Jeremiah Wells by split decision back in February of this year. He's on a kind of a win-loss type thing, but he's fought some big names: Michael Morales, Tim Means, Neil Magny, Carlos Condit, Keenan Song, Alex Oliveira, Alex Morono, Thiago Alves. I mean, he's fought a bunch of people. Mike Perry, he's been around for quite a while. So, yeah, I feel like this should be a good fight between a couple guys that have been around for a bit. Moving on, we got, I mean, we're still in the early prelims. This is crazy. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like the most stacked card ever, but it's definitely stacked in the way that you know almost at least one guy in every fight, pretty much. If you've been around for a while, you'll recognize a name in every single one of these fights. So we got Cody Durden versus Joshua Van. Durden 17-6 overall. Joshua Van 11-2. This is a flyweight in the early prelims. And who was that term? Losing track here. Durden 6-4 in the UFC, coming off a win over Matt Schnell, but before that, he was on a 2-fight losing streak. Let's see. Then we got, if my computer can keep up with me here, Joshua Van is 4-1 in the UFC, coming off a win over Edgar Chairez. Before that, lost to Charles Johnson, and then he was on what looks to be a 3-fight win streak before that. So only 1 loss in the UFC. Cody Durden looking to make it 2. That should be a good fight as well. And that brings us to the last early prelim fight: Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. This was supposed to be on a card a few weeks ago, but Anders got food poisoning, so he was sick. couldn't make it. They had to cancel it right before the fight started. So that's tough for Weidman. It was supposed to happen on that John Jones Stipe card in New York. Weidman was upset about that, but, you know, at least he's making the comeback here and still getting on a pay-per-view card. But shit, now he's on early prelims because that's how many good fights are on this card. But Chris Weidman is 16-7 overall, 12-7 in the UFC, coming off a win over Bruno Silva, unanimous decision there. Before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak with losses over, a 2-fight losing streak. One of those was grappling. Brad Tavares and Uriah Hall he lost to. Uriah Hall is where he broke his leg. So, you know, it took him a while to come back, couple years. Loses to Brad Tavares in that first comeback fight, and then turns it around, wins against Bruno Silva. So he's fighting Eric Anders, who is a little bit younger than him. I think they're the same damn age. I don't know why Anders is 37 and Weidman is 40. So shit, Weidman's at the big 4-0 right now. That's old in MMA terms. But yeah, Eric Anders, another 500 fighter, 8-8 in the UFC and 16-8 overall. He's coming off a loss to Luke Fernandez. Oh, nope, that's a grappling. His last win in the UFC, or his last fight in the UFC, was a win over Jamie Pickett. So yeah, that was March of this year. He's had a couple grappling matches going on. That he won one and lost one. So yeah, in the past year he's had 3 grappling matches. Damn. Okay. So Eric Anders, I mean, that could be fun on the ground if they both get to the ground, because Chris Weidman has some good jiu-jitsu as well. But you know, they're good on the feet too. So this could be an exciting fight. We'll see if Chris Weidman can you know, stay away from getting back in that loss column. But that brings us to the regular prelims. That's how many fucking fights are on this card. That's how many good fights that are worth talking about are on this card. And starting off the prelims is a great fight. Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. We remember Brian Battle in that France card where he beat the shit out of his opponent and then talked all kinds of shit to a crowd that was booing him. Battle is 11-2 overall, 6-1 in the UFC. Was a Ultimate Fighter winner, and he got that win over Kevin Gisette in the second round on that card in September. So before that, it was a no contest with Angelosa because of the eye poke. But he had 2 wins before that. AJ Fletcher, Gabe Green. His only losses to Henat Fakhretdinov. So 1 loss in the UFC to a tough opponent, and he's still on, you know, he's still winning. So he's fighting Randy Brown, 19-5 overall, 13-5 in the UFC. And he is on a 3-fight win streak with wins over Elizu Selesky, Muslim Selikov, and Wellington Turman. Pretty good opponents there. One performance of the night against Selikov, and 2 out of those 3 fights were this year, February, June of this year, and before that he was a Wellington Turman fight in June of last year. Before those 3 wins, he was on a 2-fight losing streak with losses to one loss to Jack Della Maddalena. The other one was a grappling loss. So I need to get used to looking at Tapology because Sherdog just a lot of pop-ups, a lot of problems. The only problem I have with Tapology is it shows you those grappling things and it throws me off in the middle of it. But I need resources. And I don't want to have to pick everything out, and yeah, you know what I mean. It's tough. It's my problem. Then we got a big fight that I'm not sure why it's on the prelims. Like this one, out of all these fights, I feel like should be on a main card. Former bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling, now up in featherweight, fighting Movsar Evloev, who this was supposed to be a fight before that got canceled. Evloev being 18-0 overall, and 8-0 in the UFC. So obviously he's on a pretty damn big win streak. His last few fights: Arnold Allen, Diego Lopez, Dan Ige, Hakeem Dawodu, those are some big names there with the performance of the night or fight of the night bonus for the win against unanimous decision win against Diego Lopez. But these are all decisions, all of them. Every single fight in the UFC is a decision, so that's tough. But he's still, I mean, he's still an exciting fighter. So it's one of those fights that you're gonna enjoy watching, even though they're all decisions. So the canceled bout versus Aljamain Sterling was supposed to happen in the October card, and that got moved now to this one. So Aljo, 24-4 overall, 16-4 in the UFC. He's on a he's coming off a win. How many? Jesus. Yep, he's coming off a win. Calvin Kattar, which was a badass fight back in April. He did well. I wouldn't say badass fight. He did well in that fight. Unanimous decision win for him there. His before that was the loss to Sean O'Malley where he got his title taken, and that one he got TKO'd. So I mean he hasn't had a finish since 2022 against TJ Dillashaw. So we'll see what he comes out doing here. I mean, if he goes to decision with Evloev, that's what he's won by in all of his fights in UFC. And basically, you know, he definitely does enough to pull it out because they're almost all unanimous decision wins. But Sterling wins by decision a lot as well. Being in this a little more heavier weight class, I feel like maybe he'll have a little more power, maybe, I don't know, maybe be a little stronger without having to do that weight cut. But Sterling has that thing, man. It's like there's something there that kind of, it's tough. But he had a tough fight against Calvin Kattar and he survived and won. So Evloev, I don't know, is he going to be able to take him down? Is he going to be able to, Sterling's good on the ground as well. Great submissions and great grappling. So he's great at wrestling. He's got 12 wins by decision, 8-0 in submissions, 3-2 by KO TKO. So we're looking at decisions and submissions for these guys. It could turn into somewhat of a boring grappling match, but at the same time, if it goes off 5, it could just be action all the way through. You never know. But it's a toss up for me on this one. I mean, in that first fight, I'm going with Brian Battle for sure. But with this fight, I'm stuck. I'm torn. I would have to lean towards Evloev, I guess, because he's undefeated and he's proven. But I don't know if he's fought anybody like Sterling. So I think Sterling's a live dog in this one. I believe Evloev is the favorite in this one. So that's going to be a tough one to call, but it should be a good fight. Number 3 versus number 7 in the featherweight division. So that's it for that one. Moving on to Vicente Luque versus Themba Gorimbo. And Gorimbo is that guy that The Rock helped out with buying him a house or buying him a place to stay or some shit like that, because the dude was like, I'm basically homeless, $7 in my bank account. He showed a picture of his bank account. It had like $7.69 in it. And if you know anything about The Rock, he talks about how he made a decision when he had $7 in his bank account that he was going to do something with his life, and he did, as we all know. So that's a cool little story there for Themba. But yeah, he's got a tough fight against Vicente Luque, who, he's a tough fighter, just hasn't had the best of luck recently. I mean, his last fight was a loss to Joaquin Buckley by ground and pound back in March of this year. Before that, he beat Rafael dos Anjos. Before that, he was on a 2-fight losing streak. But those are big names: Jeff Neal and Bilal Muhammad, who's the current champion. So, but the original fight here was supposed to be Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz. But unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Nick Diaz is having issues. There's a video that was going out looking like he's tweaking off something and trying to set fires to some blades of grass or something. I don't even know what he's doing, but it sucks if that is truly him. There's question as to whether that was him or not. The person calls him Nick in the video and he responds to it, but it doesn't really look like him. But if he's having the issues we think he's having, I know why. I know why he looks like that. So I hope that's not the case, but I don't know that it's truly been proven that that was him. But even the UFC has posted a video of Vicente talking about that video and how sad it is and how much he hopes that Nick Diaz gets the help he needs. Diaz is I hope I've been saying Nick this whole time, because you know Nick and Nate, why do they call Asian Dwayne Johnson The Walk? Oh my God, Tommy jumps in with it. Oh my God, Tommy jumps in with the jokes. I wasn't ready for that shit. That's hilarious. As I'm talking about some that's all right. That shit was funny. So yeah, Nick and Nate, you know, you get the names mixed up, but I am talking about the older brother, Nick Diaz, who has been scheduled to fight Vicente Luque twice now and has had it canceled both times. We were surprised to even see the announcement of him coming back and fighting, especially against somebody like Vicente Luque, but yeah, it hasn't happened because of all these things that people are saying he's into, drugs and problems and drinking and, you know, not being healthy. But we haven't seen Nate talk about any of it. So who knows what the fuck's happening. But I wish the best for Nick Diaz. I hope he gets himself well and maybe makes it back for one more fight to retire properly from MMA. But I don't think that he should be looking at trying to get back in to continue his career. I think he needs to make it back in to end his career properly in the UFC. But more importantly, be healthy and be okay. So we hate to see our legends go down like that. So Luque with his new opponent, Demba Garimbo, and he is 14-4 overall, 4-1 in the UFC, like I said. Yeah, and he is on a 4-fight win streak because he lost his debut fight against AJ Fletcher in 2023 and has won every fight since then. Takashi Sato, Pete Rodriguez, Ramiz Brahimaj, and Nico Price. So a lot of decision wins there. One TKO, but could be a good fight. Asakura by KO round 1. Ratio in the chat calling Asakura by KO in round 1. I don't disagree at all. That is a definite possibility for Asakura against Pantoja, because Pantoja gets hit a lot. So we'll talk about that here in a minute when we get to it. We're still in the fucking prelims because there's so many good fights and so many recognizable names in these fights. So there's Luque versus Garimbo, and then we have the featured prelim fight, Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. Anthony Smith has been on a weird fucking track. He's 13-10 in the UFC, 37-20 overall. That's a lot of fucking fights, but I mean, he had a loss to Dolidze back in June, a win over Vitor Petrino back in May, and then a loss to Roundtree, a win over Spann, and then before that, 3 losses: Glover Teixeira, Johnny Walker, and Magomed Ankalaev. So only like 2 wins in the mix of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights. I think that Aljo fight is really just there to hype up the event. I mean, I understand why you would think that. I still think that he deserves a little more respect. I know a lot of people hate on Aljo, but I think that, first of all, I think that's going to be a good fight with Evloev, because I just think it's a good matchup. Styles make fights, and those 2 styles are good to go against each other. So I feel like it's going to be a good fight, but I still think Aljo, being the former champ, I think he deserves a little more respect than what they're giving him, especially when, you know, some of the fights on the main card feel like they should have traded places with some of the fights on the prelims or even early prelims, but it is what it is. So Smith versus Reyes. Reyes, if you remember, a lot of people thought he won that fight against John Jones when he fought against him for the title. 13-4 overall, 7-4 in the UFC. His last fight being a win over Dustin Jacoby back in June. Before that, he was on a horrible losing streak. Lost to Ryan Spann, Yuri Prohaska, Jan Blachowicz, and then of course John Jones for that title. I feel like something got in his head after that John Jones loss, I think it should be on the main card and take the place of that Bryce Mitchell fight. Oh, exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say too. That Bryce Mitchell and Crone Gracie fight should not be in the main card. It could be entertaining, but it could also be very fucking boring. And I just don't think that Bryce Mitchell maybe is worthy of being on a main card, but not Crone Gracie. So for that, with the kind of lineup this is, I think that it should be down at least in the prelims. And the Aljo fight should be in the main card, but I guess we don't make the decision, so it doesn't matter. So that brings us over to the main card finally, and we got a featherweight bout between Nate Landwehr versus Doo-Ho Choi, the Korean Superboy, who lost a couple years of his career because he had to go to his home country and do some mandatory military service, which, you know, that it sucks, but at the same time, I mean, he's come back to his career and he's still doing well. So I feel like it's okay. And he's trying to make a good run here. So we got Bryce Mitchell coming off a brutal loss. Yeah, to Josh Emmett, that horrible KO. But I mean, before that, Bryce Mitchell, you know, has done pretty decent. I wouldn't say he's like a really top fighter, but he's definitely one of those guys that was fun to watch for a while. That big knockout though, that was nasty and it was scary actually. He didn't get up for a little bit, but Josh Emmett is a beast. So but yeah, we got Nate the Train Landwehr versus the Korean Superboy Doo-Ho Choi in this featherweight bout to start off the main card. Nate Landwehr, 19-5 overall, 5-3 in the UFC. He's 9-2 in KO TKOs, 2-1 by sub, 7-2 by decision, coming off a win. Korean Superboy's 15-4 overall, 4-3 in the UFC, 12-2 by KO TKO, 1-0 by sub, 2-2 by decision. He's coming off a win as well. Now, if you look at that, 9-2 by KO TKO for Nate, 12-2 KO TKO for Doo-Ho Choi. So this could be a great, fun stand-up battle because Nate the Train is called the Train for a reason, because that motherfucker comes forward and tries to go through you. He definitely tries to act like a train, but the Korean Superboy is not scared, won't back up, definitely come at you as well. So this could be very fun. Nate's coming off a win over Jamal Emmers, and that was a TKO win for him in the first round. Before that, he had a loss to Dan Ige by unanimous decision. So I mean, he's definitely an exciting fighter, one of those guys that's fun to watch. And Doo-Ho Choi coming off a win as well over Bill Algeo. That was a nasty left hook knockout for the Korean Superboy in that one. That was in July of this year. Before that was a majority draw over with Kyle Nelson. Before that, he was on a 3-fight losing streak, which sucked. But that was back in 16, 18, and 19. So that was a while back. And, you know, he made a big comeback with that TKO over Bill Algeo. So this could be a really fun fight. Good way to start off the main card. And that brings us to the questionable fight for being on this card. Bryce Mitchell versus Crone Gracie. Ratio in the chat was just talking about this. Bryce Mitchell coming off that nasty KO loss to Josh Emmett, and Crone Gracie coming off of 2 losses in a row because, oh man, that last fight was absolutely atrocious. I don't even know what the fuck he was doing. But Bryce Mitchell, 16-2 overall, 7-2 in the UFC, 0-1. That one KO by Josh Emmett, that was bad. But 9-1 by submission, 7-0 by decision. Crone Gracie, 5-2 overall, 1-2 in the UFC. Horrible record there. 0-0 KO TKO, 5-0 by sub, 0-2 by decision. Now I'm Josh. Why did I say Josh? I looked over and saw something that said. Anyway, Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is kind of famous for that twister in the UFC. He's had a couple of them actually. So you know he has a ground game. Obviously, no wins by KO TKO, but 9 wins by submission. So that ground game is what he relies on. He's coming off the loss to Josh Emmett. Before that, a win over Dan Ige. Before that, a loss to Ilya Topuria, who's the current champ. So he was on a pretty good win streak before that. Has 2 twister finishes, I think, overall. Twister there. Maybe it's only 1. I thought he had 2 twister finishes. Either way, that twister is not an easy thing to pull off, and Bryce Mitchell's done it. But he's going against that Gracie name. Kron Gracie, of course, part of the Gracie family. 5 wins by submission, 2 losses by decision, 0-0 in KO TKOs. He had that fight against Charles Jourdain that was just fucking horrible. And that was a unanimous decision loss for him. The second loss was to Cub Swanson by unanimous decision as well. His only win in the UFC being a rear naked choke win in the first round back in 2019 over Alex Caceres. Kron Gracie hasn't fought since 2023. So, I mean, this could be a fun grappling jiu-jitsu match if you're into that. I mean, I don't mind it if it's good, but sometimes a lot of the stalling, a lot of the kind of chess game gets a little boring. If they decide to stand with each other, both of their striking is not good, not great, not good. I don't know, whatever you want to say, but that could make for a very boring and upsetting fight. So I don't know. This one's tough. I feel like it should have been in the prelims in place of that Eljo Evloev fight, but it is what it is. So moving on to the heavier weights, actually the actual heavyweight division. Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. I believe this is a rematch. And yes, and Cyril Gane has beaten Volkov before by unanimous decision back in 2021. So, but Cyril Gane is 12-2 overall, 9-2 in the UFC, 6-0 by KO TKO. Hasn't been stopped by KO TKO. 3-1 by submission. That only submission loss being to his last fight, or not his last fight, but 2 fights ago against John Jones when he lost that title fight. 3-1 by decision, and his last fight coming off a win over Sergey Spivak. Alexander Volkov is 38-10 overall, 12-4 in the UFC, 24-2 by KO TKO. Holy shit. 4-3 by submission, 10-5 by decision. He's on a 4-fight win streak though, so he's got some steam under him. Hoping to keep that win streak going against Cyril Gane, but you know, Gane has that the last win over Spivak, lost to John Jones, a win to Taito Ivasa, as you see in that top picture there, a loss to Francis Ngannou. Before that, he was on a pretty big win streak with wins over Lewis, Volkov before, Rosenstruck, Dos Santos, a lot of big wins for him. So he definitely has slowed down with the win streaks, you know, mixed in a couple losses, but he still only has 2 losses. Never been finished by KO TKO either. But Volkov has a lot of wins by KO TKO, 24 to be exact, and only lost twice by that. So yeah, this could be a tough fight for Gane, but he's beat him already once by unanimous decision, as I said before. But Volkov is on a 4-fight win streak with wins over Sergey Pavlovich, Taito Ivasa, Alexander Romanov, and Jairzinho Rosenstruck. His last loss was in 2022 versus Tom Aspinall, who is the interim champion right now. So Volkov definitely has a good record and a lot of big names in, you know, big wins over big names. So, but he has lost to Gane before, and that's what Gane's going to have the confidence with going in it. Volkov's going to be looking to get that revenge. So we'll see what happens. I feel like this should be a good fight. It could be done early, or it could just be a battle all the way through. And that brings us over to the co-main event. 5-round co-main event, actually. Did I not push the button? There we go. 5-round co-main event. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Gary. As I talked about before, this was supposed to be a title fight with Bilal Muhammad versus Rakhmonov, but Bilal's out injured with that bone infection on his toe. So Ian Machado Gary steps up and steps in to fight Rakhmonov. Both these guys undefeated. Shavkat 18-0, 6-0 in the UFC though. 8 wins by KO TKO, 10 wins by sub. no record whatsoever by decision. Every one of his fights have been finishes, either by, more by submission than KO TKO, but not by a whole lot. So 18-0, all finishes. That's fucking impressive. And then we got Ian Machado Gary, 15-0 overall, 9-0 in the UFC, 7-0 KO TKO, 1 win by sub, and 7 wins by decision. So he's definitely looking to get that KO TKO, but he can do damage on the ground as well. But he's been winning by decision recently, I believe. So let's check out Shavkat. His last couple wins: Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Jeff Neal, both by rear naked chokes. Jeff Neal, the standing rear naked choke. I'll show you a picture of that in just a second. But you can see here, Neil Magny. I'm not even sure who that is on the ground, actually. But yeah, he's got the striking, but he definitely has the submissions. He's got 2 more submission wins over KO TKOs, and this is that nasty standing rear naked choke that he put on Jeff Neal after he bloodied him up, as you can see there. So he 18 finishes and undefeated, 18-0. Like, this is definitely one of your top guys, as obviously, and being undefeated, he's an exciting fighter. You can always count on a finish, but I don't know if Ian Machado Gary will be the one that it might be the first one he can't finish, I should say, because he is tough as well. He's got the unanimous decision win over Michael Venom Page in his last fight. He went to split decision with Jeff Neal, who, as you can see there, Shavkat had that finished him by rear naked choke. But Gary has the big knees, the kicks. He's got jiu-jitsu, as you can see at the bottom, where he almost got Michael Venom Page there in a rear naked. But a lot of decision wins recently. His last head kick KO, which is this one right here against Daniel Rodriguez, was in 2023. Ever since then, he's had nothing but decision wins, but wins over good guys like Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, and MVP. So let's see whose O goes this time, because somebody's got to lose unless they come to a draw or a no contest or something. But more than likely, this will be an exciting fight. 5 rounds. I think Gary's strong enough to fight off a finish, but I don't know if he's strong enough to get the win overall. He's a good underdog pick, though, if you're looking for a good underdog to bet on. But Shavkat is tough, so yeah, be careful with that one. Let's move on to the main event. We got Alexandre Pantoja versus Kaya Sakura. Kaya Sakura coming over from Ryzen, like I mentioned before. And Pantoja on a 6-fight win streak. So, he's defended the belt a couple times. Had a good run leading up to getting the belt over Brandon Moreno. And Kaya Sakura was a champion in Ryzen, and I'm not even sure if he was champion in a different organization. I'll find out in just a minute. But Alexandre Pantoja, 28-5 overall, 12-3 in the UFC, 8-0 by KO TKO, 10-0 by sub, 10-5 by decision. So he hasn't been finished at all. It's only been decision losses for him. He's on that 6-fight win streak, like I said. And we got Kaya Sakura, 21-4 overall. This is his UFC debut, fighting in a 5-round championship fight. So you got to be a badass to come in and do something like that. 13-3 by KO TKO, 3-0 by sub, 5-1 by decision. So he hasn't been submitted, but he's been knocked out before, and he's lost by decision. He's on a 2-fight win streak. But let's start with Alexandre Pantoja, and he's got his last wins were that title defense over Steve Erceg, unanimous decision win there. title defense over Brandon Royval, unanimous decision there. Royval gave him a hell of a fight. As you can see how oh well, actually that's not it yet, but he gets bloodied up a lot. So that's what I'm worried about here, because Kai Asakura is definitely a striker, and he's got that knee that he throws up the middle is fucking dangerous. So we'll see more on that in just a minute. But Pantoja's the guy who gets beat up a lot. May look like he's losing if you catch the last couple rounds of a fight, but he winds up winning. So yeah, he takes a lot of damage is the point here. His last loss was in 2020, which was a unanimous decision loss. Askarov. But since then, he's had wins over Manel Kopp, Brendan Royval twice, one of those being a title defense. Alex Perez, he beat Brandon Moreno for the title, and then Steve Erceg. So yeah, he's on a tear. He's doing well. He's looking to keep that title and to prove, continue to prove why he is the champion in that division right now. But he's kind of beaten everybody in the top. So that's why they had to bring in somebody like Kai Asakura. There you can see that big shot against Royval in his last in his title defense against him, and then this nasty uppercut where he was beating up Steve Erceg. Erceg did well, but then he fumbled it at the end and made a big mistake, and it cost him the fight for sure. I think he had a great chance of winning that fight had he not gone for that takedown that put him in trouble. So at the end of the fight. So, Steve Erceg will be waiting to see him come back and make his way back to a possible rematch, considering how that fight went. But is Alexandre Pantoja's, fight IQ and confidence and comfortability in the cage, be able to be enough to get over Kai Asakura, who's making his debut in the UFC? So you never know how those debuts are going to go. Different level of competition, fighting the champion of a new organization you're going into. As you can see, Ryzen, they fight in a ring and not a cage. I'm sure he has some kind of experience in a cage before. But yeah, he was 13-3 in Ryzen, and he was the champion there. He won the belt in December of last year, so a year from now. It was a knee to the body over Juan Archuleta. So yeah, that was, and then before that he had a win over Yuki Motoya. That was also a knee to the body finish. Those knees to the body are killer. I told you. His last loss was a unanimous decision loss to Hiromasa Ogi Kubo. Not a lot of other names. I mean, he has a loss to Kyoji Horiguchi. We know that name. And a loss to Manel Kopp. We know that name as well. He's currently in the UFC, but that was a loss to him in Ryzen. So yeah, I mean, like I said, 13-3 by KO TKO, and he's got that nasty knee to the body, as you can see in that top picture. And I believe in this picture is from his last fight against Archuleta, and that was a nasty knee to the body as well. Yeah, big striking going on here, and Pantoja gets hit a lot. So this is another live dog. I think I feel like he's the underdog, but I feel like I think he's the underdog. Yeah, he's the only underdog I actually picked on my picks, which I'll show you in just a minute. He's definitely the underdog coming in, UFC debut, fighting for the belt right away, and not a lot of people have done that. And this will be a good way for him to make his way into the UFC and become even more popular than he already is. So I feel like this is gonna be a fun, exciting fight. Pantoja sometimes gets involved in some somewhat boring fights, but I feel like this one might be different. So here's my picks. Oh man, I forgot I needed to fix that. Again, doing it on the fly. Couldn't fully see. It's okay. Get that fixed right now. Good enough. All right, so here's my picks. Again, I said I had Kai Asakura as my only underdog on this. Plus 205, beating Pantoja. That's my pick. Shavkat Rakhmonov in the co-main event, minus 375 favorite, but I gotta say, man, I was back and forth on that one, and I feel like Ian Gary has a great chance of getting a win there too. Both undefeated fighters, so we'll see which one gets a loss after this fight. 5-round co-main event, but for my official pick, I gotta pick Shavkat. Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. Volkov, having lost to Gane before, he's the underdog. Cyril Gane, -375 favorite. But Volkov's been on a tear, and he's been doing well. So is he going to get that revenge on Cyril Gane? That could be another good underdog fight if you want to take that. But yeah, and then we got Bryce Mitchell, -850 favorite over Kron Gracie, probably because of the disgusting show that he put on the last time Kron Gracie, fought and lost. It was just a boring ass, silly fight. And that's probably why Bryce Mitchell is such a favorite. Not to mention strength of schedule, just the record overall. I mean, come on. So again, Bryce Mitchell for the win there. The biggest favorite of all my picks. And then we got Nate the Train Landwehr. It's hard for me to go against Nate the Train. Korean Superboy Doo-Ho Choi is his opponent. He's a great fighter. I like him as well, but I got to go with Nate the Train. He's just a badass, and he's fun to watch. So he's the -130 favorite. So that's my pick. And those are my overall picks for the main card parlay. I put the money next to it because that means I'm actually going to make a bet using these picks. And I will also make multiple other bets. Some kind of from the heart, some kind of from the mind, and others from maybe some more in-depth research. I usually make a few different bets, a few different parlays, and very rarely win because let's not talk about it. So do what you will with these picks. It's up to you. It's just what I'm picking, and I will make bets on the pay-per-views. So there it is. That's it. It's over. UFC 310. That is it for the show as well, because there's not much else to talk about, and my head still is not the best, so I am gonna call it now. I actually didn't go that much shorter than usual, so thanks for joining in. We had Ratio in the chat adding to, holy shit, that sounds loud. Ratio is in the chat adding to the questioning and the everything else, so thanks for that interaction. DJ Tommy, DJ Magix from the Technically Unsound podcast joining in as well. Thank you guys. Cold Art Maker, loyal fan and chatter, so appreciate that as well. Everyone else that joined in, thank you guys. Don't forget to check out the Technically Unsound podcast going live Sundays and Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Arizona time. Check out the pop-up podcast we did last night on this channel. And don't forget about the watch party going on Saturday during the main card of UFC 310. I will be live here in studio with a couple guests, Golf and Glory, Clark, and my buddy Josh. So we'll be here doing that. Check it out. Don't forget, come back next week for a recap of UFC 310 and the watch party. Till then, I'm out. Take it easy.